Jordan, you're saying that you want the president to spearhead this discussion. The question is, what plans does the Democratic Alliance have to alleviate when it comes to unemployment?
Well, the DA has actually got a superb track record on growing the economy and creating jobs, because we understand that in order to create jobs, you've first got to grow the economy very fast. And to do that, you've got to have pro-growth, pro-investment, pro-business policies, not policies that chase away investment and make sure that the economy will not grow. So it's all well and good for the president to talk about growth, but unless he matches that with policies that actually create growth, then you won't see employment.
Jordan, I must ask, and I'm going to be real with you. Have you ever gotten to a point where you say, Mr. President, you know what, we're the Democratic Alliance, but for the purpose of this exercise and for making South Africa's future better, let's sit down, come up with a collective plan in terms of how to curb the unemployment crisis, and in fact, utilize some of our strategies so that you can implement at a very fast rate?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what we'd really like to do with him, and that's what we've written to him about today. So we've basically said, let's, for the sake of the country, sit down together and talk about the kind of policies that can get our economy growing. And those are not difficult policies, but they require difficult choices inside the government. You've got to deal with Eskom decisively, as the president said in February, break it into two companies, get a competitive energy market, stop bailing out failing entities like SAA. And so we want to get around a table, discuss these policies, and discuss how we can support him in getting them through, because we all know what needs to be done, but unfortunately he is blocked from doing them by certain factions inside his own party.
Who's blocking him?
Well, it seems that there is a left-wing faction inside the ANC that is determined that he cannot implement the kind of major structural economic reforms necessary to get our economy growing. And I presume that that faction is headed by the Deputy President and his supporters. But whatever the case is, unfortunately, all of the options are used up. There are no options left. We have got to reform this economy. We've got to do it quickly, because we are really facing an economic crisis of unprecedented proportions, unless he is prepared to do what is admittedly difficult to do, but what has to be done.
So you're saying that the Deputy President could perhaps be the stumbling block into an economic crisis that can actually be curbed?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is a great point. This economic crisis is not necessary. We do not have to be in this position. We could be growing the economy. People could be finding work. We could be collecting more taxes and paying for more services. We are not doing that because there is, as I say, this faction inside the governing party that won't let these reforms happen. I think that that faction is governed or led by the Deputy President and the Secretary General, Mr. Magashula, but that is up for debate. But what is clear is that the President has spoken about the reforms necessary. We heard him much earlier this year in his first State of the Nation saying that Eskom will be split up, we will have a competitive energy sector. But yesterday we got another devastating announcement from Eskom, and we are still no closer to those absolutely crucial reforms.
I must ask you, when it comes to a certain economic crisis, I mean, it's an economic crisis that is literally countrywide, but in the Western Cape particular, have you gone, and I'm talking about taking initiative now, have you gone to private sector, because we know where private sector stands when it comes to being able to hold the power of the true economy of South Africa, right? Not necessarily with public sector, but with private sector. Have you gone to the private sector and said, guys, we need to create more jobs and opportunities for employment? How do we do so? How do we open up our markets so that indeed people of all colors, all creeds are able to get employment opportunities? Because right now, where the private sector sits, it's still the one in control.
You know, you say it's in control, but let's just break up your question quickly. It is in control of, obviously, the private sector decides whether to invest or not. So in that sense, you're right. But it is only going to invest in an economy that is growing, where people are spending money and buying products and services and so on. So in a sense, it relies on the national economic environment. If there's a zero growth environment, it can't invest. And when there's no investment, again, there's no growth. And so you get into this vicious cycle that we're now in, where employment just keeps going up, and so fewer and fewer investments are happening. And in fact, as I'm sure you're seeing around where you live, businesses are closing. So this is a very bad situation. Now, what we've got to do, and what we try to do where we govern, is to say to business, how can we make it easier for you to invest and do business so that you can focus on what you do well, which is grow your business, come up with new products, design new things, and grow our economy. Government and business have got to work hand in hand in our country if we're going to get out of this mess. We can't treat business as an enemy. They are absolutely our partners in getting South Africa growing. And for too long, they have felt as though they are treated as an enemy in our country, when in fact, entrepreneurs, people who are taking risks, starting small businesses, growing those businesses into big companies, those are the people who are going to get us out of this. But they need a government that treats them as partners and provides an environment for economic growth.
Jordan, we're going to leave our conversation there. The DA's Shadow Minister of Finance, Jordan Hill-Lewis, joining me to just shed some light in terms of maybe the Democratic Alliance's plans to curb the unemployment rate. We'll see that as we progress.